Close your eyes and remember when you were little. You're watching TV when the screen suddenly goes black. No sound, no picture. The adults sigh, but you feel a quiet thrill. Candles are lit. A board game comes out. You sit on the floor, shaking the dice, listening to your stomach growl, secretly hoping the power outage will last just a little longer. That's just one of 17 unforgettable childhood memories from Britain in the 1970s. In this video, you'll return to a slower, more grounded world where memories didn't live on screens, but in smells, sounds, and moments shared by an entire generation. 1. The summer of 1976. The summer of 1976 wasn't just warm, it was relentless. For months, Britain stopped feeling like Britain. The grass turned pale and brittle. Lawns cracked. Pavements grew so hot you could see the heat rising from them. Water became something you queued for, not something you took for granted. Outdoor taps appeared in streets, shared between rows of houses. Families carried buckets for drinking, washing, and cooking. In some areas, water was turned off for most of the day. Adults worried. Newspapers warned. The country felt fragile. But for children, it felt completely different. Days stretched on forever. Paddling pools sat on dead grass. Ice lollies melted faster than you could eat them. You stayed outside until your skin burned and your clothes stuck to you. When the rain finally came, it flooded. But what people remember most isn't the crisis. It's the feeling of a summer that seemed like it would never end, too. Power cuts and the 3-day week. In the early 1970s, electricity wasn't guaranteed. During the miners' strikes, Britain introduced the 3-day work week. Businesses shut down. Television stopped broadcasting at 10 o'clock. And without warning, the lights would simply go out. Homes were lit by candles. Shadows danced across walls. The air smelled of wax and cold. Heating was limited to one room. So families gathered together under blankets. You could see your breath indoors. For adults, it was stressful. For children, it felt like an adventure. Board games came out. Conversations lasted longer. With no television to disappear into, people actually sat and talked. Even boredom felt different when everyone shared it. Today, a power cut feels like an emergency. Back then, it was a reminder that daily life could slow down without falling apart. 3. The Pop Man. Before plastic bottles and supermarket aisles, soft drinks arrived at your front door. You knew he was coming before you saw him. The rattle of glass bottles. The low hum of the delivery truck. The Pop Man was on the street. He carried heavy wooden crates filled with thick glass bottles. Cherryade, cream soda, dandelion and burdock. Each bottle came with a small deposit, so empties were never thrown away. You ran out to return them, clutching them carefully so they wouldn't smash. Soft drinks were treated as something special. A glass with Sunday dinner. One bottle shared between siblings. Nothing was wasted. The Pop Man knew everyone. He chatted with parents. He remembered birthdays and parties. When plastic bottles arrived, he disappeared. But people still remember the sound. That sharp pop when the lid came off. 4. Public information films. In 1970s Britain, safety messages didn't whisper. They scared you on purpose. Public information films were shown on television and in schools. They warned children about water, electricity, railways, and construction sites. The images were dark. The tone was serious, and the consequences were never softened. One moment, a child was playing near a pond. The next, a calm voice explained how children drown. These films were unforgettable. They gave kids nightmares. But they worked. You stayed away from substations. You didn't mess around near train tracks. You crossed roads more carefully. Compared to today's gentle warnings, these films feel shocking. But they reflected a time when danger was close and supervision was light. Children were trusted with freedom. And these films existed to keep them alive in it. 5. Pennies, sweets and picnics. A few coins in your pocket felt like real wealth. That money was meant for one place. Behind the counter sat rows of clear plastic bins filled with sweets, pink shrimps, cola bottles, flying saucers, chocolate limes. You grabbed a small white paper bag and moved slowly along the display, choosing carefully. Every sweet mattered. The scale decided everything. There was always the temptation to sneak an extra piece. Most kids did. The staff usually pretended not to notice. Your fingers became sticky before you even left the shop. The bag felt heavier than it looked. And somehow, it lasted longer than any modern candy does today. Pick Mix wasn't just about sugar. It was about choice, patience, and small rewards. For a generation, those few coins bought independence. 6. Saturday morning television. Saturday mornings had a rhythm everyone knew. Around 9:30, children across Britain settled in front of the television. There were only a few channels, no recordings, no second chances. If you missed it, it was gone. You had to choose. The BBC offered Swap Shop, polite and cheerful, with children trading toys and writing letters that appeared on a big board. ITV had Tiswas, loud and chaotic, full of shouting, buckets of water and custard pies flying through the air. You couldn't watch both. There was one television in the house, no remote control, and the choice mattered. Monday morning playground arguments were guaranteed. Families even split along channel lines. For a short time each week, nearly every child in the country watched the same thing at the same moment. Today, television is personal and endless. Back then, it was an event shared by millions. 7. The smell of freshly printed school worksheets. The teacher handed out the papers, still warm and slightly damp. Without thinking, every child lifted the sheet and breathed in. The smell was sharp and sweet. A mix of ink, alcohol and paper. The duplicator machine used methylated spirits, and the result was unmistakable. Maths problems, spelling lists, purple text that sometimes smudged if you weren't careful. No one talked about the smell, you just knew it. And decades later, catching it again could send you straight back to a classroom floor, sitting cross-legged with a pencil in your hand. Today, worksheets arrive clean and scentless, printed in bulk by machines no one ever sees. Back then, they felt freshly made, almost handmade. It's a small detail, but it mattered. Because childhood memories often attach themselves to the senses, not the lessons. 8. Sub-UTO. On the living room floor sat a green felt pitch that never quite lay flat. White chalk lines peeled at the edges. Tiny plastic players stood on weighted bases, ready to be flicked toward an oversized ball. Sub-UTO wasn't just a game, it was commitment. You collected teams. You learned player positions. You invented tournaments that lasted entire weekends. A snapped player base was a tragedy. Stepping on one bare foot was unforgettable for other reasons. Games could be interrupted at any moment. A sibling walking through the pitch was grounds for an argument. A vacuum cleaner meant instant panic. Compared to modern video games, Sub-UTO looked simple, but it required patience, imagination, and time. It taught kids how to lose, how to wait their turn, and how to build an entire world from a box on the floor. 9. Raleigh Chopper bicycles. The Raleigh Chopper wasn't just a bicycle, it was a status symbol. With its high handlebars, long seat, and chunky frame, it looked like something built for freedom. Every child knew who on the street had one, and everyone else wanted it. You rode it hard, skidding stops, sharp turns, racing nowhere in particular. It wasn't the most practical bike, but that didn't matter. What mattered was how it felt to ride it. In America, kids had the Schwinn Stingray. In Britain, the Chopper filled that same role. Bikes meant independence. You could disappear for hours without explanation. No phones, no tracking, just an instruction to be home by tea. The bicycle didn't just move you through streets. It moved you a little closer to growing up. 10. Waiting outside the pub. Children weren't allowed inside pubs, so they waited. You sat in the back seat of a car parked just outside. A packet of crisps, a bottle of lemonade. The first few minutes were fine. After that, time slowed to a crawl. You watched people come and go. You counted cars. You pressed your face against cold glass windows. Inside, adults laughed and talked. Outside, you waited. There was no entertainment, no screens, just boredom and patience. Eventually, your parents returned, smelling of beer and cigarette smoke, cheerful and relaxed. You climbed out stiff and hungry, ready to go home. Today, this would seem unthinkable. Back then, it was normal. It was one of the earliest lessons that the adult world didn't revolve around children, and that waiting was simply part of life. 11. Cindy and Action Man. Most children in 1970s, Britain grew up with one of two worlds. Girls had Cindy. Boys had Action Man. Cindy came with outfits, tiny shoes, handbags, and dreams of adult life. Action Man came with gripping hands, moving eyes, uniforms, and weapons. He could be a soldier, a diver, or an explorer, depending on the day. Both dolls shared the same fate. Cindy's hair was cut the moment boredom struck and scissors appeared. Action Man's fuzzy hair slowly fell out, leaving him patchy and strange looking. Accessories were lost under furniture, never to be seen again. These toys weren't displayed. They were used, thrown into bags, taken outside, dragged through mud and carpet alike. Compared to today's collectible toys, these were meant to be handled, damaged, and lived with. They shaped how children imagined adulthood long before they understood it. 12. Jackie Magazine. For teenage girls, Jackie Magazine was more than something to read. It was a guide. Each week, it arrived filled with fashion tips, pop star posters, romantic short stories, and problem pages offering advice on love, friendships, and growing up. The tone was earnest. Everything felt important. Jackie was read in bedrooms, shared with friends, and sometimes hidden from parents. Letters were written and mailed, then waited on for weeks. hoping for a reply printed in the next issue. Boys mocked it without understanding it. Girls read every word carefully, often believing it held answers to questions they couldn't ask out loud. In America, magazines like 17 played a similar role. Before the internet, these pages were how teenagers learned what was normal. Jackie didn't just entertain. It quietly shaped expectations, emotions, and the private inner world of a generation. 13. School milk. Every school day came with the same ritual. A small glass bottle of milk delivered to the classroom. Sometimes it was warm. Sometimes it tasted faintly metallic. In summer, it could be unpleasant. In winter, it was easier to tolerate. Children lined up, took their bottle, and drank it because that was simply what you did. Some loved it. Many hated it. Few escaped it. School milk was meant to make children healthier, part of a nationwide effort to care for growing bodies. When the program was reduced, it became a political symbol, remembered with jokes and resentment in equal measure. In American schools, milk was tied to lunch trays. In Britain, it stood alone, unavoidable. Today, the idea of handing every child the same drink feels strangely rigid. But at the time, it reflected a belief that childhood health was a shared responsibility. 14. Radio Luxembourg under the covers. At night, after the house went quiet, something small and secret happened. A radio clicked on beneath the blankets. Radio Luxembourg broadcast music that wasn't always available on British stations. The signal crackled. The volume stayed low. An ear pressed close to the speaker as new songs drifted through static. It felt forbidden, not dangerous, just private. A quiet rebellion carried out in the dark. You listened to pop and rock late into the night, memorizing melodies, feeling connected to something bigger than your bedroom. The radio became a companion, not just a device. In America, teenagers did the same with late-night AM stations. The experience was universal. Music didn't arrive instantly back then. You had to wait for it, search for it. And when you found it, it felt earned. 15. Flared trousers and knitted tank tops. Fashion in the 1970s was impossible to ignore. Trousers flared so wide they brushed the pavement. Colors were bold. Patterns clashed. Nothing was subtle. Then there were the tank tops. Knitted by mothers or grandmothers, usually from scratchy wool, in shades of brown, orange or mustard yellow. They itched. They never quite fit right, but you wore them anyway. These clothes weren't chosen. They were provided. Hand-me-downs, homemade, and worn until they couldn't be worn anymore. Today's children scroll and choose. Back then, you accepted what you were given. Those clothes said a lot about the time. Fashion was slower, more personal, tied to family, not trends. Even when it was uncomfortable, it was part of growing up. 16. Space hoppers. The space hopper was impossible to miss. A large inflatable ball, usually bright orange or pink, with a grinning face and two handles on top. Before you even climbed on, you noticed the smell. Thick rubber, sharp and unmistakable. You pumped it up, climbed aboard, and bounced. Direction was never guaranteed. You aimed for the pavement and ended up in a hedge. You bounced too hard and tipped sideways. Knees were scraped. Elbows bruised. Laughter came first, tears sometimes later. Nearly every child had one, or desperately wanted one. Streets filled with bouncing figures, wobbling along with no real control. And when a space hopper punctured, it was devastating. There was no fixing it. Compared to today's carefully designed toys, the space hopper was simple and slightly dangerous. But it encouraged movement, noise, and outdoor play. It belonged entirely to the street. And once summer ended, it disappeared until the next one came around. 17. The Silver Jubilee of 1977. In 1977, Britain celebrated 25 years of Queen Elizabeth II on the throne, and the whole country seemed to step outside at once. Streets were closed to traffic. Long tables were set up down the middle of the road. Red, white, and blue bunting hung from lampposts. Neighbours who barely spoke all year sat side by side. There was food everyone recognised: sandwiches, crisps, jelly, cakes, paper plates and cardboard crowns. Children ran between tables while adults talked and laughed. Someone always had a radio playing. You were given a commemorative mug just for being there. Many people kept theirs for decades. In America, the bicentennial felt similar. A shared moment. A shared mood. The Silver Jubilee wasn't about politics. It was about belonging to a street, a community, and a moment everyone remembered together. In the 1970s, childhood followed a simple logic. Life moved at a slower pace. Experiences were shared. Routines repeated, and most days were shaped by the same streets, the same schools, and the same people. Children spent more time waiting, more time outside, and more time figuring things out for themselves. Entertainment wasn't constant. It arrived at certain hours, in certain places, and often involved other people. Today, childhood follows a different logic. Life moves faster. Experiences are personalized. Entertainment is always available, and time is filled more efficiently. Neither approach is better or worse. They simply reflect different worlds, but these memories remain because they were physical, shared, and lived in real spaces. They remind us of a time when growing up meant adapting to the world as it was, not shaping the world around us. You're standing in a supermarket in the 1970s, small enough that the shelves feel tall. Your fingers brush the edge of a candy box, smooth plastic, a little dusty. There's a faint smell of sugar, warm cardboard, and something chemical you don't have a name for yet. Adults move calmly down the aisle, not watching too closely. What you just remembered was real, and it was only one of 20 things that once filled those shelves, then quietly disappeared. Chapter 1: Candy and Drinks. Sweet, but never harmless. On those shelves, there were flavors that most children of the 1970s would never forget. And back then, no one thought they could cause any problems. 1. Candy cigarettes, later renamed candy sticks. There was a type of candy called candy cigarettes. They came in small cardboard boxes, almost identical to the real thing. White paper, red tip. When you opened the lid, there was a faint, powdery candy smell. Children held them between two fingers, copying the way adults stood outside shops or leaned against their cars. No one panicked. No one rushed over to stop them. It was just pretending, and everyone knew it. In British supermarkets, these candies gradually lost their original name. The word cigarette disappeared, even though the shape stayed exactly the same. The candy itself barely changed. The feeling did. What had once been simple role play suddenly looked too real, and then, quietly, it vanished from the shelves. 2. Space dust or cosmic candy. There was a tiny packet of candy called Space Dust, so light you almost forgot you were holding it. Tear it open, pour it onto your tongue, and instantly your whole mouth woke up. Crackling. Popping. A gentle fizz you could almost hear inside your own ears. Kids burst out laughing, dared each other, swore it felt like something wasn't right, then still reached for another packet. Rumors spread quickly. Much faster than the truth. Adults whispered that it might be dangerous, that it could do strange things inside the body. Most of it wasn't true, but fear doesn't need proof. Before long, Space Dust disappeared, leaving behind only the memory of that sharp, electric jolt on the tongue. 3. Diet drinks sweetened with cyclamate. Then there were the diet sodas. Cans that looked completely ordinary. Bright colors. Simple fonts. They promised sweetness without the burden of sugar. Adults drank them at kitchen tables, in cars parked along the curb, trusting the label and getting on with their day. Cyclamate was just another ingredient. Hard to pronounce. Easy to overlook. Then one day, it simply wasn't there anymore. No loud announcement. No notice taped to the shelf. Drinks were reformulated or replaced, and shoppers adjusted without much comment. What mattered at the time wasn't the chemistry. It was that the drink tasted familiar, and it fit naturally into the rhythm of everyday life. 4. Campino strawberry and cream candy. There was another candy called Campino, strawberry and cream flavored. Red and white stripes twisted neatly around each piece, cheerful and tidy. You could spot them instantly, in a glass jar or a plastic bag. The flavor was very gentle. Sweet strawberry, soft cream. Not sharp, not harsh. They had a strangely polite quality to them, like something your aunt would offer after dinner. For many years, they stayed exactly the same, untouched by trends or redesigns. Then one day, they were gone. Nothing that came after ever truly recreated that calm sweetness. People noticed, but quietly. Some things don't disappear with a bang. They simply stop showing up. Chapter 2. Household chemicals. The things that were always there. It wasn't just children. There were products adults believed were harmless too. These were the chemicals commonly found in homes throughout the 1970s. 1. Wright's Coal Tar Soap. There was a soap called Wright's Coal Tar Soap. It came wrapped in dark paper, heavy-looking and serious. The bar inside was dense, almost sticky, with a smell that clung to your hands long after you rinsed them. People said it was good for the skin, that it had been around for a very long time. Parents used it without explanation. Grandparents trusted it completely. You didn't ask questions. You just washed your hands, washed your body. Later on, coal tar quietly disappeared from the formula. The name stayed. The scent softened. What once felt medicinal, powerful, became something gentler, safer, easier to accept in everyday life. The old version didn't vanish because people complained. It vanished because standards changed, slowly and without fanfare. 2. Aerosol sprays containing CFCs. There was a time when almost everything came out of an aerosol can. The sound always came first. A sharp hiss when you pressed the nozzle. Hairspray fogged up the bathroom mirror. Deodorant hung in the air. You held your breath, waved a hand a few times, then carried on with what you were doing. No one talked about where that mist went afterward. It simply disappeared. These sprays worked perfectly, always consistent, always reliable. When they began to vanish, the feeling was inconvenience more than fear. The replacements didn't spray the same way. They sputtered. They dripped. Something smooth had been lost, and most people noticed it immediately. 3. Talcum powder. In the bathroom, there was also talcum powder. The container was very simple, usually pink or white. You gave it a gentle shake, watched the soft cloud rise and fall. The scent was clean, familiar, comforting. Babies. Bathrooms. Bedtime routines. It felt harmless, almost gentle by nature. No one imagined danger. In something so light, many years later, people no longer bought it the same way. Some stopped altogether. Some switched to different brands. The ritual remained, but the trust had been shaken. What once floated freely in the air now carried a question no one had ever thought to ask before. 4. J's fluid and other harsh chemical cleaners. There were also things in the house that weren't subtle at all. One of them was J's fluid and similar heavy-duty chemical cleaners. Their smell hit you before the bottle even came out of the cupboard. Strong, eye-watering, impossible to mistake. The floors shone afterward. The drains ran clear. You knew they worked because they felt so aggressive. Windows were opened. Children were told to stay out of the room. That was the safety system. Over time, these cleaners were diluted, relabeled, or removed. New words appeared on the bottles. Gentle, fresh, family-friendly. The old products no longer fit the mood of the time. Chapter 3. Packaging and materials. Solid, convenient, and taken for granted. Beyond food and chemicals, there were changes happening in the outer layers, the things we held, opened, twisted, and squeezed every day without really thinking about them. Packaging and materials were once taken for granted, until they weren't anymore. 1. Original glass coffee jars, the Gold Blend era. Old-style glass coffee jars, like Gold Blend, always felt heavy in the hand even before you opened them. Thick glass. A metal lid that took real effort to twist loose. When it finally gave way, there was a soft pop the moment the pressure was released. The smell of coffee spread immediately, rich and warm, filling the kitchen. When the coffee was gone, the jar didn't disappear, it stayed. It held screws, buttons, nails, coins, or nothing at all. Kitchen cupboards were full of jars like that. So were basements. No one worried about the weight or the risk of breaking. Glass meant quality. It meant what was inside was worth protecting. When plastic replaced it, the change felt practical. But something solid was lost, and it wasn't easy to name. 2. Lead-soldered food cans. Lead-soldered food cans looked no different from any other cans. Simple labels, firm seams, familiar shapes. They were stacked neatly in kitchen cupboards and pantries. People opened them with basic tools, tipped the contents into a pot, and carried on. There was no reason to think about how they can have been sealed. It had always been that way. Later on, the seams began to change, quietly. Manufacturers adjusted. Regulations tightened. Most shoppers didn't notice. The food tasted the same. The cans still looked close enough. Only years later did people realize that even the container itself had once been part of the story. 3. Primula cheese tubes. Primula cheese tubes had a very particular feel in the hand. Soft, metallic, and satisfying to squeeze. A smooth ribbon of cheese flowed out, ready for crackers or sandwiches. No mess, no knife required. It felt modern, efficient, slightly futuristic. Children loved it. Adults appreciated the convenience. The inner lining of the tube was invisible, and easy to forget. Nothing leaked. Nothing spoiled quickly. Over time, concerns shifted to the things you couldn't see. The tube stayed familiar, but the material inside it changed. The product adapted without drawing attention to itself. Most people noticed only one thing. It still worked perfectly well. The rest happened behind the scenes. 4. Unpasteurized milk with blue tops. Unpasteurized milk used to be delivered in glass bottles very early each morning. Blue foil tops, peeled back by hand. Cream rose to the surface, thick and unmistakable. You shook the bottle or you didn't. Either way, it was part of the ritual. Milk back then tasted fuller, heavier. People trusted it because it was local, fresh, and part of everyday life. Gradually, regulations grew stricter. Pasteurization became the standard. Blue top bottles became harder to find. What disappeared wasn't just a product, but a small daily habit, something that had once been completely ordinary. Chapter 4. Toys and children's items. More freedom and more risk. On supermarket shelves in the 1970s, there were things tied to childhood, items that were handed directly to children, with very few rules and a great deal of freedom. 1. Clackers. There was a toy called Clackers. Just two hard plastic balls, connected by a string. Nothing more. You held the small ring in the middle, set your wrist just right, and the two balls began to swing. Clack, clack, clack. The sound carried across sidewalks and schoolyards. It drew attention, and that was part of the appeal. The balls struck each other fast and hard, sometimes too hard. The string snapped, the plastic cracked, knuckles took the hit. Foreheads too. Kids learned quickly, often painfully, how much force was too much. No one stood nearby to supervise. If it hurt, you stopped. If it didn't, you kept playing. And then, at some point, that sound disappeared from both shops and playgrounds. 2. Food-shaped, scented erasers. In many children's pencil cases, there were erasers made to look exactly like food. Tiny hamburgers, little slices of cake, bright, glossy pieces of fruit. They looked good enough to eat. You held them close, smelled the artificial sweetness, pressed a fingernail into the soft rubber. They sat in pencil cases, in desk drawers, traded quietly during class when the teacher wasn't looking. They didn't erase very well, but that wasn't the point. They were for showing off, for smelling, for comparing. Sometimes younger kids put them straight into their mouths, without thinking twice. Adults frowned, then let it slide. Later on, the designs changed. The shapes became less realistic. The scents grew weaker. Play became just a little more cautious and a little less tempting. 3. Lucky bags, mystery toy bags. Back then, you could buy something called a lucky bag. A thin paper or plastic bag, stapled shut at the top. You never knew what was inside. That was the magic. A cheap plastic whistle, a spinning top, a tiny car, sometimes something with sharp edges, or a strange shape. You reached in without looking, your fingers brushing against whatever was waiting inside. It felt like winning a prize, even if the toy itself wasn't very good. Parents didn't check the contents. They trusted the bag. Over time, surprise became a problem. Loose parts, small pieces. The bag slowly became more transparent. The toys more standardized. Mystery gave way to certainty, and with it, a small thrill quietly disappeared. 4. Cheap toys painted with lead-based paint. There were toys that were very cheap, painted in colors so bold they couldn't be ignored. Red, yellow, blue. You could find them everywhere. Corner shops, market stalls, supermarkets. No one asked where they were made or what was in the paint. The toys chipped. They wore down over time. Children sucked on them, dropped them, carried them everywhere. It was completely normal. Then, later on, standards changed. Paint formulas were adjusted. Imports were checked more carefully. The toys were still there, but they looked different. Softer colors. Less shine on the surface. Things that had once been loud and glossy learned how to be quieter. Chapter 5. Brands and Culture. When society moves on, but not everything disappeared because of chemicals, materials, or technical regulations. Some things vanished because the way we looked at them changed. And that shift often began very slowly, inside the most familiar brands of all. 1. Robertson's Jam, with the golly figure on the label. There was a time when you saw Robertson's golly everywhere. On jam jars, on kitchen tables, inside cupboards you opened every morning. Bright colors, a smiling face. Instantly recognizable. For many families, it was simply jam, nothing more. Children scraped out the last bits from the jar without glancing at the label even once. Adults didn't say anything about it. Then, over time, the image stopped being invisible. People looked longer, thought harder. What had once blended perfectly into everyday life suddenly became harder to place there. The jars changed. The character disappeared. Breakfast stayed the same, but the packaging was saying something different. The issue wasn't a single jar of jam. It was the things a society was no longer willing to overlook. 2. Turkey Twizzlers in school lunches. For many years, turkey Twizzlers were a familiar part of school lunches. Twisted pieces of meat, a soft texture, a smell that filled the cafeteria. Children knew them well, even if few could explain what was inside. They were hot, filling, and familiar. Parents didn't scrutinize the ingredient lists. Schools served what was cheap and easy to prepare. Then the conversation began to change. People started talking about food differently. Lunch trays were no longer just meals. They became part of a much larger debate. Turkey Twizzlers didn't survive that shift. They became a symbol, fairly or not, of something people wanted to leave behind. When they disappeared, it felt sudden. Even though the ground had been moving for years. 3. Vesta Curry, Adventure at Home, Curry Kits. Vesta Curry promised something foreign right from the box. Bold colors, names from faraway places. Inside were dried ingredients, packets of spices, and cooking instructions that felt almost ritualistic. For many families, it was an adventure without leaving home. You cooked carefully, followed each step, and hoped the result would be decent. The flavor was unlike anything else in the cupboard at the time. Then expectations changed. People wanted fresher tastes, faster meals, or better ones. Preservatives that had once gone unnoticed became topics of discussion. Vesta boxes gradually disappeared from the shelves, not in outrage, but with a shrug. Other options had arrived. 4. Scented, food-shaped soap bars. There was a time when even soap was designed to be playful. Scented soap bars shaped like fruit, desserts, or candy. They sat by the sink, bright and eye-catching. The scent was sweet, almost edible. Guests often commented on them. Children reached for them first. They blurred the line between washing your hands and playing. Then homes changed. and bathrooms changed with them. Cleanliness became quieter. Design became simpler. Soap grew smoother, less confusing, more intentional. Playful shapes no longer fit the new atmosphere. They didn't disappear overnight. They were simply no longer chosen. Back then, daily life ran on a simple kind of trust. If something was sold in a supermarket, people assumed it was fine. There were fewer warnings, fewer choices, fewer versions of the same thing. Most families bought the same brands, used the same products, and didn't think much about it. Today works differently. Safety comes first. Labels are longer. Rules are clearer. Products are tested, adjusted, personalized. Choice is everywhere, and caution comes with it. Neither system was perfect. One was rougher, more hands-off. The other is careful, controlled, and constantly watching. Maybe every era gives up something to gain something else. And maybe what we miss isn't the products themselves, but the way life once felt around them.